Hello, folks. Steady Gains here. I know you guys have been waiting for this video for a while, so what I'm gonna do, I had plans to make this relatively edited up, but we're gonna keep it raw to make sure that at least you guys get the information and are able to get everything set up properly for using the indicator. So first things first, when you go ahead and join on WAP, you'll be redirected. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you already have the indicator access set up, but just to go over it one more time, once you do click join, you are able to directly connect your WAP and TradingView together through WAP itself. So once you get that set up, if you are struggling with that, send me a DM. But once you get that set up, here is how it's going to go. So you're going to get a chart like this. You're going to go ahead and create a new chart layout. Go to indicators, go to my scripts, or invite only, sorry, and then you'll see the steady setup. So you'll go ahead and put that on. Once you get the steady setup on, your chart's going to look something like this. So the first thing that we're going to do is go over the settings, what these settings do, what each of the dashboard, etc. stuff means, and then we'll go over the setup that I like to have, the 6 to 7 different ways to utilize this indicator. So first things first, the chart setting that you want to have. I highly recommend going ahead and changing the chart color to black, so one, you can see the indicator stuff over here, and at least you can see stuff a little bit easier on this side as well. Once you have that set up to black, it's completely up to you if you want to have grid lines or not. Some people like it, some people don't. Up to you. I'm going to keep them on for the sake of this. Now, when you're going to go ahead and open up the settings for the indicator itself, there's going to be two ways to do this. One, you can click the up here, show indicators legend, and then you can go over here and click the settings icon, or you can just double click on the dashboard itself. And when you double click on the dashboard itself, you'll have the chart pop up like this, or the settings pop up like this. But before we get into that, let's just go over the indicator itself in terms of the dashboard and what everything means. So in this right corner, you have the steady setup dashboard. In this, you're going to have, first things first, risky. What does this mean? Risky is going to be the risky entry that has been taken based upon the bias. Okay, so as I mentioned many times in the stream, you're going to have two ways of taking the trades based off the dashboard. You're going to have the safe way, which is obviously going to be safer, and you'll see this pop up on the chart itself like this right here. And then you're going to have the risky way, in which you won't see it pop up on the chart. So you're going to have to keep an eye out if you're watching the chart to see when it does take the risky entry. Up next, we have chop. All of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just going to go over them anyways. So chop is obviously an indication of whether we're chopping or not. Structure is going to tell you whether we are stable or volatile. And then bias is obviously going to be the direction that we are looking for. Now, once you go ahead and click this over here and get the settings up, this is what I'm going to recommend that you run for the settings itself. First things first, go ahead and click the chart layout up here and go ahead and put yourself on either 2 or 3. For the sake of this video, I'm going to go over and go with 4 just to go over all the different ways that you can have the chart set up. Once you get it onto 4 over here, the first thing that you're going to need, and this is going to be the chart that you're going to need on every single layout that you do, whether you go with 2 or whether you go with 3, whichever secondary chart you end up using, that's going to be different. But the first chart that you're going to have will always have to be the 15-minute chart. The 15-minute chart is going to be our main chart. We're going to use the bias from the 15-minute, and then we're going to pair that with either, depending on how you want to be using this indicator, if you want to be safe, you're going to either pair it with the 15, or you're going to pair it with the 5, 3, or 1. And then we'll go over the settings for each and which ones I recommend using. Now, for the 15-minute chart, again, this is going to be your main chart. Go ahead and get the settings up. You're going to turn confirmed only mode off. Okay. Then you're going to scroll down over here. You're going to go ahead and make sure your signal label size are on normal. You're going to turn the show bias background off. It just makes it much cleaner. And then you're also going to have the bias change labels at the most recent 2. The reason I say the most recent 2 is it'll declutter your chart a little bit. You don't have to do that, but that's just what I recommend to do. And while we're here anyways, we'll go over the settings themselves here. Now, there's nothing here that you really need to change. Everything else is pretty much set up the way that it should be in order for this to work best. Now, if you're purely looking to trade the New York session, then yes, you can go ahead and turn on the limited dashboard to the sessions. However, you don't really need to do that. It's there if you do want to do that. And same thing that you can do for the signals and the bias as well. Everything else pretty much does not need to be changed. The stops and targets are what I use personally. If you do want to change that, you can, but this is what I use. Now, going back to the settings, that's what's going to be the setting for the 15-minute. Now, you can pair this, as I mentioned, with either the 5-minute, the 3-minute, or the 1-minute. Okay? Now, the settings for the 5, 3, and 1 are all going to be the same. Go ahead and open up the settings again. You're going to leave confirmed mode on. What I like to do again is go ahead and put that onto normal, turn the bias background off, and I like to have the bias labels completely off. Why? Because we're not using the bias labels from the 15-minute or the 5-minute, and you can also see it on the dashboard. We're using it from the 15, right? The 15 is going to be our main one that we're going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that for the other ones as well. So go ahead and set this to normal, turn that to hide all. Go ahead and do the same thing over here. Make sure confirm mode is on. Turn that to normal. Hide all. Okay, now, the higher the time frame, the less risky it's going to be, right? Now, if you're starting out with the 15-minute and you just want to play it very, very, very safe, you can take these safe trades from the 15-minute paired with the 15-minute bias. So what does that mean? If bias says up and there's a signal that comes from the safe side, that's going to be the signal that you take. Now, this is going to be the safest signals that come out of this indicator. However, you're only going to end up getting 1 to 4 trades a day with this, okay? If you want a little bit more trades, that's when you go ahead and you bring out these second chart that you're going to be using, or third chart that you're going to be using, right? Sorry, I forgot to turn that off. So with the 5-minute, you're definitely going to get more than 1 to 4 trades a day, but you're going to get less trades than the 3-minute. And then the same thing for the 3-minute compared to the 1-minute. You're going to get less trades on the 3 than you are on the 1. I personally like to use the 3-minute the most, right? I'll use the 15-minute bias paired with the 3-minute signal that ends up coming in. Some people like to use it with the 1-minute. It just depends on the conditions that we're in that you're going to be able to do that with. Now, the different ways of using the indicator. We kind of have gone over these already, but just to go over them on a clearer aspect of it, let's go ahead and start with that. So the first way of using the indicator is going to be the 15-minute bias paired with the 15-minute risky, right? So if you see that the bias says up and you see that the risky has taken a long, you can go ahead and take that trade. Now that, as I mentioned earlier, is not going to be displayed on the chart. The only one that's going to be displayed on the chart is going to be the safe trade, right? So that's one way to use the indicator. Bias 15-minute plus 15-minute risky. Second way to use the indicator is going to be bias 15-minute paired with the safe 15-minute, okay? And as I mentioned, that's going to be one of the safer ways to utilize this indicator. Now, the third way to use this indicator is going to be the 15-minute bias paired with the 15-minute or with the 5-minute safe. The fourth way to use this indicator is going to be the 15-minute bias paired with the 3-minute safe. And the sixth way to use the indicator, or fifth way to use the indicator, is going to be the 15-minute bias paired with the 1-minute safe. Now, obviously, as I mentioned again, I'm going to reiterate this, that the 1-minute is going to be the riskiest of them all. You're going to have a lot of trades that are coming out of the 1-minute, right? And when's the best time to be using the 1-minute? This is something that you guys will have to play around a little bit with. There is a reason I say that the 3-minute is my favorite to use. And there's a reason that we have everything on confirm only mode, right? So we don't end up getting wicked out of a lot of the trades. I'll go over that a little bit more towards the end of this in terms of why we have some of the settings that we have and what's the best way to utilize this setup or have these setups set up on your chart. So going back to what I was saying in terms of the 1-minute being the most riskiest, when the structure and the chop show no chop and stable, I do like to utilize the 1-minute. Okay, but again, to be safer, the 3-minute is going to be your best bet if you're just starting out. The 15-minute paired with the 3-minute. Now, we've gone over 5 ways of utilizing the indicator. We're going to go over another way of utilizing the indicator that's a little bit riskier. And I have mentioned this many, many times before and shown this on the streams of doing this method. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the chart for this. The one that I am referring to. So let's go ahead and open this in another tab. So this setup over here that you guys see, when the conditions are showing on the 15 minute, remember the 15 minute is going to be our main chart that we're using. If the 15 minute is showing choppy under chop and volatile under structure, another way of utilizing the indicator that I've mentioned a lot of times is, for example, in this, we have the conditions of chop and volatile currently, right? And the bias says down. So if the bias says down and we start breaking upwards here, we had a breakout level around 280. I'm going to look to take the opposite of that. I'm going to short it. Why? Because my bias is pointing down. The structure says volatile and it says choppy. So most likely we go back into chop range, right? We're going to be volatile. I'm expecting it to come back down and make a big move after making that big move back up. And that's exactly what happened over here when we mentioned to take the short at 280. When I mentioned to take that short at 280 this day was because of that reasoning, right? And vice versa is going to be true as well, where let's say that the chop is showing choppy, structure is showing volatile, but the bias says up. If we were breaking down over here, right, we had a breakdown level somewhere over here. I would say maybe 2,500. You just got to make sure that you have levels and check out those areas. I'm going to counter that, and I'm going to take a long because, again, it says choppy and volatile, and my bias says up. So that's another way to utilize the indicator. Now, realize that this way is risky, and you cannot use the same level twice. Once that first level has been tapped into one time, it is much, much riskier to take the entry on it again. So keep that in mind. And if you go through the setups that I have posted inside of the server, you'll see that there's a lot of different variations of these setups that I just went over in terms of the 5-minute triggers, the 15-minute triggers, the 3-minute triggers, etc. Right? Now, one thing I do want you guys to keep in mind is that this is meant to be utilized in the New York session. The New York session is going to give you the best market conditions to be utilizing the indicator. You can utilize the indicator in after hours as well. There's nothing wrong with that, but you just have to keep in mind that the market is a little bit different in after hours time period. But with that, that pretty much covers all the ways of utilizing the indicator that I wanted to mention. Now, a couple of things that I do want to go over before we end this in regards to the indicator as well is going to be that in some cases you will see on your 5, 3, and 1 minute that signals are disappearing when you refresh the chart. The reason for this is that the indicator utilizes live data from the chart. When you refresh it, it's going to start utilizing the live data from when you refreshed it rather than from when you had the chart open from earlier. So that is the reasoning that you might see some signals disappear when you do refresh the chart, because sometimes the signals are going to be based off of higher time frame candles that haven't necessarily closed yet, and then you'll see that preview pop up, and then if you go ahead and refresh the chart, it never confirmed or it never committed, and then it'll have disappeared as well. So keep that in mind. But everybody so far hasn't had an issue in regards to that. I just mentioned that so that way you don't think you're going crazy if you reset it or you refresh it and then something is gone. But anyways, that pretty much covers the ways of utilizing the indicator. If you have any questions, please feel free to DM me. The frequently asked questions as well as the guide go over everything as well. I don't want people to get confused in terms of, okay, that, oh, you have to wait for the bias flip and then take the first signal after that. That's going to be the best signal. Not necessarily always true. One thing that I also want to go over in terms of the tips and tricks for this indicator is going to be keep an eye out on the bars, the amount of bars that there have been in terms for the bias on the 15 minute. If it's relatively fresh, 1 to 2 bars, you want to, or if it's relatively fresh, it's just been 1 bar, you want to wait for it to at least confirm and close on that bar, right? So if you are getting if you are trying to front run things, you can do that at the 1 bar area, but keep in mind that that's risky. I typically wait for there to be at least 2 bars with the bias before I take a signal. And obviously the first signal that comes up will be the safest. The second one that comes up will be a little bit riskier. The third one that comes up will be even riskier, and so on. And when you start seeing that the bias has been up for at least 30, I'd push that up to actually nowadays with the way that the market is. You will have to gauge this for a couple of days to see what the trend is looking like. But usually speaking, for the last at least 2 to 3 months, it has been around 40 to 50 bars when I start to be hesitant on taking a signal again. Because 40 to 50 bars means that the trend has been pretty deep, right? We're pretty deep in the trend. I'd start to expect to see a bias flip, etc., start happening. So that's another tip or trick for utilizing the indicator. Now, I don't recommend that you have all four up like this. Don't do that. As I mentioned earlier, you want to have maximum three. Okay, maximum three. And what people have been doing is keeping the 3-minute on and the 1-minute on instead, and they like that setup. Or what you can do is have the 5 and the 3-minute as well. But that's going to be up to you. Now, as you can see that the bias did flip to the upside around here, right? So this 3-minute signal would have been good to take. This 3-minute signal would have been good to take. Now this is the third signal here, so this is a little bit riskier, right? And you did have a signal over here, and the bias was green as well. Over there, we just made it disappear for the last signal. And then the bias went back to neutral and then went back to green again around here. And now you have another signal that pops up over here at 25,761. This one probably, let's see, took the entry there. 61. This wouldn't have hit 15 points, so you wouldn't have moved your stop to break even. This is still in play right now, currently speaking, but it is Globex hours, so keep that in mind. New York session is going to be the best time frame or best time to utilize the indicator. Now, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to cover. The last thing is going to be the alerts. Now, when you are setting up the alert system for this, it's going to be a little bit tricky because the setup itself has a couple of labels that pop up, right? We have the bias as well as the buy signal pop up. So you have to be careful when doing this. It doesn't necessarily work perfectly every single time. But if you set the condition to steady gains or steady setup, make it the buy, same as chart. You put it once per bar close, and you can go ahead and create that signal. And then you can go ahead and do the same thing for the sell side for that. So we'd go ahead and we do condition that sell once per bar close, create, and then we can do that same thing for the 3-minute buy once per bar close, and then also for the 3-minute sell. Now, when you do have this set up, keep in mind there are going to be previews of some signals that haven't solidified that will trigger and aren't really there, and you might get an alert for it. So that's why I'm saying be careful with this a little bit. There is a little of a trading view glitch because sometimes it goes based off the bias rather than the signal itself. So make sure you do pull up the chart and take a look that everything is lining up before you take that trade. And if you want some more setups to see how things worked out, etc., what do setups look like, make sure that you go back into the Discord and take a look at all the setups that I have posted in the category of setups under the steady indicator category. And that pretty much covers it, folks. I hope that this was informative enough to help you guys out and figure out how to utilize the indicator. And I look forward to seeing that you guys' progress with this and user results and in the profits section. All right, folks, take care. I hope you guys have a great day. Good luck. And remember, DM me or message me if you have any questions or need help. All right, peace.